My stepsister slept with my ex-fiancé. Then they went ahead and got married. My family was okay with it. 5 years later, this happens. When I was 23, now 28, I was engaged to Ryan, who was 32. Our engagement ended when my stepsister Kelly, who was 24, begged me to leave him because they loved each other. But Ryan was too afraid to break up with me because, well, he did not want to hurt me or my family. When I confronted Ryan about it, he denied it and said she's been trying to come on to him for some time. And he never mentioned it because he did not want to ruin our relationship. He begged me not to believe her, so we continued how we were. Kelly grew resentful and made nasty comments about how I was forcing a man who did not even love me to marry because I had low self-esteem constantly. A month later, she sent me a video of them having sex in my bed and multiple screenshots of him telling her he loved her, how he wished she was the girl he was marrying. He hated that I would not let them be together. I was devastated and angry, but my best friend convinced me not to go nuclear on them, and instead to quietly move out when Ryan was at work the next week. So that's what I did. I contacted my dad and my stepmom and asked them if I could just please move in temporarily. I removed the money I had contributed to our joint account for the wedding expenses and transferred the rest to him because I closed the account. Once I got settled in, I sent all the screenshots she sent me to all of our relatives and his. Ryan tried to get back together with me multiple times, but I ended up blocking him. When I found out, he proposed to her with the same ring he gave me. Now, Kelly is my stepsister from my mom's side. I have another stepsister who's 36 and a stepbrother who's 38 from my mom's second marriage and half-sister. They all went to the wedding. Whenever I tried to express I was hurt by the fact that they were supporting Kelly and Ryan as though what they did to me meant nothing, they would shrug it off and say they could not cut them out completely because, well, they were family. I haven't spent a single holiday with my mom's side since. Neither has my older biological brother or sister. I only see my mom and half-sister when I invite them over to my place, as Kelly and Ryan moved in with my mother and my stepdad a year after they got married. Our relationship is very rocky, but I've grown closer to my dad and stepmom and their children, who have all been very supportive since all this happened. So it's not been really bad. On New Year's Day, my boyfriend, now husband, proposed to me. We had a small engagement party, which I invited my mom and half-sister to. They never turned up because, quote, I was excluding half of our family. I never invited my stepdad or step-siblings because they were pretty hurtful when it came out that Ryan and Kelly were sleeping together. They claimed it wasn't their fault I got in the way of true love, and made me out to be some sort of vindictive Disney villain for being angry with them. We were planning to have our wedding ceremony this summer, but in late February, my husband suggested we postpone until next year because we were so concerned about COVID, and it might have got worse and we would have to reschedule anyways. I ended up finding out I was pregnant a month before our original wedding date. So we had a courthouse wedding on the date with a plan to hold the ceremony next year. Only my dad's side of the family were aware of both pregnancy and the wedding. My stepmom likes to knit, so she's been making stuff for the baby. Recently, she posted about the thing she's made on Facebook with caption talking about how excited she was to have another grandchild. I was tagged in the post. I have zero issues with the post. I just never told my family I wasn't going to inform my mother's side. It wasn't that I intentionally hid it from her. She just never seemed very interested in my life or relationship, so I never brought it up. My mom called me an hour later demanding to know if I was pregnant and how she could not believe I have not told her she was finally going to be a grandmother. She has since invited me and my husband over to her house multiple times. I've declined every single time for the obvious reason. My stepdad, who I've barely spoken to in 5 years, has reached out to tell me how excited he is to meet the baby and my husband. Same with the siblings. Even Kelly reached out to my husband to congratulate us. I was furious. The next time my mom and stepdad called me, I finally laid into them. I told them I did not want them to keep inviting me over when they knew I would be forced to see Kelly and Ryan. I told them how hurt and angry I still am over what they did to me and how my, quote, family dismissed my feelings. I told them how they would not throw Kelly and Ryan away, but they were so quick to leave me out to rot, whilst I was going through the worst betrayal I've ever experienced. I told them I wasn't even sure I wanted people like them in my child's life. My mom was crying hysterically and kept saying I was being cruel, and I could not deprive her of her first grandchild. The thing is, my baby isn't her first grandchild. Her sister has 2 adopted daughters already, who my mom doesn't even try to bond with. She kept wailing about how I might be the only person in our family to even give her grandchildren. My stepsisters are both having a hard time getting pregnant, and my half-sister has proclaimed herself to be child-free. My stepdad got angry and defensive. He claimed I was petty for holding on to something that happened 5 years ago. He pointed out how I had found someone else, so I should understand how love works, and sometimes 2 people just can't help themselves. You love who you love, basically. He said Kelly and Ryan were happy together, so I should be happy for them the way they're happy for me and my husband. Ugh, the ironic thing is, my sister told me Kelly and Ryan look like they were on the verge of divorce, and they argue constantly. Even my mom complains to her about them. And how my siblings all hate him, but pretend they like him for Kelly's sake. I ended up hanging up because, well, I was so angry, and when I get angry, I start crying. I did not want them to think they got me. Since I've been receiving texts and calls nonstop from my mom's family, they're all essentially telling me I should be over things already. It's gotten to the point me and my husband have switched to phones so he can screen my messages for me, and I don't have to read them. I thought this story was completely toxic, and I felt bad for OP because the 2 people she trusted the most backstabbed her 5 years ago, and her family wasn't even supportive throughout it. Let me know what you guys think of this, but personally, I don't blame OP for wanting to be no contact. Let me know in the comment section down below. Who was the worst villain of the story? Was it the mother? Was it the stepsister who cheated? Was it the ex-fiancé who cheated? I would love to know your opinion on this. Or were they all evil? Our next story we're going to look at involves an apartment complex that has 1 couple, male and female, and 1 other female who's staying there. Well, things start to get weird. Story number 2, let's check it out. I'm a 27 female, and I moved into my flat in October of last year to take the place of a mutual friend of mine and my new flatmate. We genuinely have great atmosphere in the flat, and both have very similar expectations and habits. And while we're not, quote, friends yet, we are very friendly. She seems super normal and level-headed. When the lockdown began in March, my boyfriend of 2 years, who's 31, was living with his sister and his mother, who was undergoing chemo, who lived alone, and needed somewhere to stay where she could be looked after, so she moved into his room, and he came to stay with us. My flatmate was totally fine, and we had a proper chat and ground rules were set, etc. But ultimately, the flat is huge for 2 people, and she has a kind of granny flat set up in hers. Either way, she gave definite approval. Now, we three get on great, but never really spent a ton of time together. We're all work from home and spending the occasional evening playing games or whatever. But ultimately, we did not mingle much than before. My boyfriend, however, cooks every night for the both of us as a thank you. And so we now eat together, and my flatmate seemed happy to be included. It was great. However, last week, my boyfriend took me aside and told me that while he was in the courtyard hanging out at the washing, she ambushed him from behind and gave a huge speech about how she's in love with him. And while she respects he's with me, she has deep feelings for him and that she's available if he were to be single. Oh, and please don't tell OP. Well, she did not try to kiss him, but she tried to hold his hand. He was very anxious and flustered when he was telling me this. The flat atmosphere is very awkward now, but as far as she knows, he's not said a word. She's not said anything else to him, but he did mention that she's touched his arm a couple times as she was walking past recently, and it's really gotten under my skin. My boyfriend is confused because he has not spent that much time with her apart from dinner, and never alone. I spoke to our mutual friend who was shocked, and says she's never done anything like this before, and she'd never known my housemate to have a crush on anyone, ever. I've not seen her acting strangely in any other ways, and it hasn't outwardly affected how she treats me. We can't move right now because of virus, money, etc. How do I deal with this? This story's crazy. I could not even imagine being in this situation. I think, though, what we're lacking the most in this story is just straight up communication. Before I read a comment that I saw in the original post, I want you guys to know there is a complete update that we're going to hop in right after this, but let's check out this comment. Bro, what the heck? As the other comment says, have a serious and long conversation with her, your boyfriend included. This is extremely inappropriate, and it's obviously affecting everyone in the apartment. Communicate how it has affected the atmosphere, and let her know that she can't be touching up on your boyfriend. Okay guys, here comes the update. I trust my boyfriend completely. Even if I didn't, this apartment is large, not massive. I know where that beloved MF is 24/7. A lot of you asked when after my housemate confession, he told me about it. He told me a couple hours afterwards. He explained to me after we had a chat about it that he was afraid I would not believe him or be angry. Because at first he thought it was weird and a joke that made him uncomfortable. And he felt, rightly so, weirded out. I agree with the bulk of you that her continued touching is harassment. And while a number suggested he just confront her himself, I empathize with being in a situation without breathing room where someone is sexually harassing you. It's not easy, and you can quickly find yourself unsure if those brief moments of crossing a line actually happened. He's not on our lease, and understandably, he was concerned about me and the power dynamic in the house. I also don't believe that it was, as some suggested, a hypomaniac episode. I have BP too, and while I understand the love rush, she exhibited zero other behaviors, and never tried to contact my boyfriend outside of that weird touching. I also can appreciate there's no way she was actually in love. Okay, so, yesterday, after a tense few days of trying to avoid her, my boyfriend and I were in the kitchen at breakfast with her around in the living room. I went to our bedroom, which is just off the main area, to brush my teeth. I walked back to grab my phone as she was sitting behind my boyfriend, who was looking in the fridge, and caught her running her hand and forearm across his lower back, where his t-shirt had ridden up a little. My boyfriend, who did not see me, yelped really loud like, "Oh!" and just lost it. He yelled at her to stop, And when they both saw me, he starts going, "You see? You see? This is what I'm talking about." I was furious, just whole body anger, and I could see she had now realized he had told me about her confession, and just sprinted to her room and slammed the door. My boyfriend and I went out for a walk to calm down, and he kept apologizing for not being, quote, more firm. But he was shaken up, and some of you told me I should just confront her head on, which in the moment I 100% sided with. I was so angry for him. He told me he'd rather give her the opportunity to do it diplomatically. I appreciate what you guys said about the lockdown being extenuating, and in discussion with our mutual friend, I was willing to believe that an element of it was naive, and a bit of a fantasy gone too far. I was willing to be kind to her. When we returned with a plan of action, we knocked on her door, but she didn't answer. We tried a couple times, but she would not come out. Although she was, quote, seeing my WhatsApp messages come later afternoon, I was just over it. So, I knocked and told her I was coming in. I sat her down on her bed and told her gently but firmly it was inappropriate, making us uncomfortable, and told her she had to get the hell over it herself if she intended to continue to live with us. She burst into tears and starts crying about how she's so sorry and what a bad person she is. And she can't believe the pressure of lockdown is getting to her. Whatever, I felt bad. Started sympathizing and trying to get compassionate. And then she says this, "It's just so unfair that the guy I'm in love with has a really great girlfriend." Guys, I lost my shit. Unfair my ass. I told her she had a lot of growing up to do and perspective to learn, and that she owed the house an apology. She started to have a meltdown, a full, weeping, hiccuping, snotty meltdown. And then, when I stood up to leave, I spotted in her clothes rack my freaking shirt. I took it and went back to my room. My housemate cried loudly with the door open until like 7 p.m. I don't know, maybe for attention? When I cracked, I used our emergency contact sheet, called her mom, and told her she had to come pick up our housemate. I've never met this woman, who came rushing in like a superstar, but the look of annoyance and embarrassment on her face when she arrived and found her 27-year-old daughter having a tantrum told me this wasn't a new part of her personality. My housemate also STFU pretty quickly after she realized her mom was there. They did not say anything to us, and we just hid in our room until they were gone. I think she'll be gone at least for a while, but I texted her to let her know it would be best if she texted me before she came back. I don't know when I'll see her. Technically, the lease ends in August, so my boyfriend and I think we can make it work and find someone new. If not, it's not so long till we can resign without her. As a coda to all this, my boyfriend mentioned if she took a blouse, maybe she took other stuff. I appreciate some of you considering this as an invasion of privacy, but I did go back in just to check the clothes rack. I found a set of my jeans, my t-shirt, one of my boyfriend's work shirts, who knows what she was using that for, a vinyl I owned, and my ducking charm bracelet from when I was a kid, from inside my jewelry box. Oh yeah, and a sheet of my old antidepressants. This was just what's on the rack display. I imagine there's more in the drawers. I don't know if this was the right thing to do, but I left them there for now because I don't want there to be any doubt she stole them. There's zero chance she's going to live here anymore. Honestly, I hope she gets help. I'm really angry and violated, as is my boyfriend. But I can empathize with the havoc and uncontrolled mental health issue it can wreak on your behavior. And while it's still wrong, it still sucks for her to experience it and lose friends. Just when I thought this story couldn't get any more bizarre, oh yeah, it gets way more bizarre. Turns out she's a thief too. Well, I'm glad that this living situation is basically over. Let me know in the comment section down below. Has anyone ever experienced a living situation that was this weird, bizarre, and strange? Our final story of the video is about a babysitter who gets stuck with an unexpected bill. You will not believe this entitlement story. If you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button right down below this video, as you will not want to miss some of these updates. Here comes the final story. Years ago, I would often babysit my neighbor's 10-year-old daughter. He was a divorced father with the kind of ex that would send us spreadsheets of child-rearing expenses calculated to the penny, and weekly invoices, complete with terms of penalties on her own choosing for late payments. He paid big child support and generally paid her invoices on time, because she would cut off access to the kiddo if he didn't. His ex, who's the snake, and I had basic text messaging contact. She and I had previous dust-up because of a sudden weather change necessitated a jacket for the kiddo. We popped into the nearest discount store and I let her pick out a jacket. Kiddo loved it. But her mother threw a giant fit at me because it wasn't a brand name. I blew it off and the neighbor and I laughed about it when he reimbursed me. She gave me the silent treatment. Ugh, darn. Time moved forward. Father always reimbursed kiddos' expenses and encouraged fun and healthy activities. One day, he called me and apologized that he was getting held up at work, and kiddo had an orthodontist appointment. He asked me to take her and I agreed. And he called the dentist to authorize. We got there and they would not see her without a payment, $225. It was necessary because kiddo's braces were hurting her. Dad wasn't available, but I knew he would reimburse me, so I put it on my credit card rather than call her snake of a mother. Kiddo got patched up, Dad reimbursed me, I paid the card and did not use it. A few months later, I got a past due call from my card company. Repeat charges from the orthodontist. I let Dad know and called the orthodontist, who told me I signed an automatic payment agreement. I gave my quote, "Heck no, I'm just the babysitter" speech, and did not get far with them. So I canceled the card. Dad apologized profusely and reimbursed me. A month later, I get a nasty call from the orthodontist about my card declining. I kindly inform them I'm not the parent, and then I provide the snake's phone number. About an hour later, the snake is furiously calling and texting me. I silenced my phone and just looked later. She maxed out my voicemail and all her text messages were about how I was abusing her child by denying the kid medical care. One voicemail was from the police, letting me know she filed a complaint. How I could get a copy from my attorney and inquiring about whether I wanted to file a counter complaint. So, yep, I sure did. I moved out of state and the prosecutor called me once just to ask questions. Then I never heard back from the prosecutor. Last I heard from kiddo's grandma, the snake took a plea bargain and Dad got custody, and Grandma was enjoying a lot more time with kiddo. Well guys, I think the fact at the end, when it said the prosecutor called OP once just to ask a few questions and never called back, just proves how crazy this woman was to expect her babysitter to cover the bills of her child. I'm not surprised that OP's neighbor divorced her. Guys, have you ever had a bizarre neighbor like this? Drop your situations down in the comment section. I hope you all enjoyed this content today. Subscribe for more, as Mr. Reddito is here every single day. Alright guys, take it easy, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.